question, where were you on September the 11th, 9/11? I remember distinctly where we were. We were in the studio here getting ready to have a demonstration by Oral Hershiser, famous pitcher, and we had a little skit all planned where I was going to outpitch him, or he was going to eat, drink my shake and suddenly throw strikes. It was all set up, and suddenly the news came down. I think we may have been the first to break the fact that this was clearly a terrorist thing, because I had flown as a pilot out of LaGuardia and knew that on a clear day nobody hits buildings. You just don't do that. But the question now we must ask ourselves, could another 9/11 attack happen again?
Well, terrorism analysts say yes, it could. And next time, the major strike could be all across America, including at your house. Ephraim Graham has the story.
Today is a day of remembrance, but it's also a day when the nation focuses on security.
There probably is some worry on the part of intelligence officials that the bad guys, such as they still have any ability to hit us, would like to hit us on a day like 9/11.
The administrations of both George W. Bush and Barack Obama have made dismantling al-Qaeda a top priority, and they've been largely successful. Just this week, an airstrike killed the terrorist network's #2 leader in Yemen.
The al-Qaeda organization that hit us on 9/11 more or less is on the run to the point where it may not even exist in a couple of years from now.
But military and national security experts warn in some areas the U.S. is more vulnerable than ever. Topping the list, cybersecurity.
Well, a lot of people talk about a digital Pearl Harbor, which is where you'd go in and you have a cascading series systems of failure. So you take down the electrical grid and everything starts to cascade from that, and essentially the whole country goes black.
Former CIA Director James Woolsey tells CBN News while al-Qaeda may be weaker, Hezbollah is gaining strength and is capable of launching a cyber attack.
Terrorist groups are a major concern. Some of the things they might get involved in, such as hacking into our electric grid and the rest, could be devastating. And Hezbollah, at least, has historically had the money to learn a lot and do a lot. And I would first and foremost, I think, be concerned about them.
At a conference Monday, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano warned cyber warfare is one of the most rapidly evolving threats our country faces. She says the federal government and the private sector must improve the way they share information if we ever want to be able to prevent a cyber attack. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
We can't imagine what it would be like to be without power. Just suddenly everybody's without power. We've had that, you know, we had a storm a few months ago that just blew through, started way out in the Midwest and blew all the way through to Virginia. Great swaths of the country were without power. And just think what it would be like if there's no power, no telephones, no satellites, none of that. And a cyber attack could take that out. Well, before I get too much into the real serious stuff, which you've already started, I want to congratulate the Brits. They finally got a man to win a major championship, the United States Open, Andy Murray. It may have been, I think it was the second longest match in history. Mats Wilander against Ivan Lendl may set the record still, but nevertheless, did you see any of the tennis?
I did not. I didn't watch it. You're a tennis fan, I know. So you watch.
I'm a sports buff, sort of.
Is that an oxymoron to be a sort of buff?
I'm sort of a buff. I used to play tennis. I used to play golf. I used to do a lot of stuff. But anyhow.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to
Andy Murray. I mean, it was an incredible match against Djokovic, who was, you know, he's just so passionate, and they just kept hitting the ball back and forth. And I mean, you know, to go at that space, intensity for 5 hours?
Yeah, very intense.
Unbelievable. Well, anyhow, congratulations to the Brits. Rule Britannia. Britannia rules the right. Okay, we'll sing some song, and our congratulations to Andy Murray for that championship. Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom. Lee.
And Pat, we will show you highlights of that match in just a few minutes, but let's get back to the 9/11 anniversary. Americans are getting a break from presidential politics on this 11th anniversary of 9/11. President Obama and Republican challenger Mitt Romney are suspending negative ads, and neither will appear at outwardly political events. Obama scheduled a moment of silence at the White House and a trip to the Pentagon. Mitt Romney is addressing the National Guard at its annual convention. President Obama may not be enjoying the post-convention bounce many polls indicate. Many of those surveys were taken among registered voters, and not all of them will vote. But an ABC News Washington Post poll of likely voters found the president with a 49-48 lead over Mitt Romney. That's basically unchanged from before the Democratic convention. U.S. citizens living in Israel are showing a major interest in this election. A record number have registered to vote. That number spiked after the Democratic Party temporarily removed language about Jerusalem from its convention platform last week in Charlotte. Some observers believe American voters in Israel could influence the race for the White House if it's close. Chris Mitchell has that story now from Jerusalem.
There are an estimated 150,000 eligible U.S. voters living in Israel. That number may seem insignificant, but candidates target populations like that all the time.
If you think about it, it's a long plane flight, but it's like traveling to Dayton, Ohio, or Fort Lauderdale, Florida, similar-sized cities.
Former Bush White House spokesman Ari Fleischer and Republican Jewish coalition head Matt Brooks believe Israel is fertile ground.
We're here because we want to talk to U.S. citizens. We want to get them registered and get them voting. There is a huge population of folks living here in Israel who come from some of the most important battleground states in 2012, places like Florida, places like Ohio, places like Pennsylvania.
150,000 votes in a close election can make a huge difference in who the next president of the United States will be.
That's why iVote is encouraging Americans living in Israel to register.
iVote Israel is out meeting voters on a daily basis. We go door to door. We meet them at public events. We'll just start canvassing in shopping malls.
Eli Piepsh says more Americans here are registering to vote than ever before.
We hear a multitude of different reasons, but certainly one of the undercurrent is a very strong reaction that they have for the current president. Right now, there is a lot of frustration with the treatment that Israel has felt from the current administration.
Several Americans living here told CBN News why they'll be voting.
American Jews in Israel should vote because it's a civic duty of Americans, whether they live in Israel or America or Mexico or any place.
I want America to be strong, economically, politically, morally.
One is the support of Israel, especially in light of the threats with Iran. And the second important issue is I'm very concerned about the economic strength of the United States.
The American Jewish community usually votes more Democratic, but in Israel, it's the opposite.
Well, the American community in Israel is a powerfully pro-defense, pro-strong foreign policy, pro-Israel community. Why else would they be living here? And so they are a natural Republican constituency.
But whichever way they vote, if iVote succeeds, Americans in Israel will play an important role on Election Day. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The federal deficit has topped $1 trillion for the fourth straight year. The Congressional Budget Office says it's already reached just under $1.2 trillion through August, with a month still to go in the fiscal year. All of the trillion-dollar deficits have come under President Obama, Pat.
The economy is obviously going to become the deciding factor in this year's presidential election. And with that kind of a debt burden overhanging the economy, there's small wonder that businesses are not hiring. Why? Their unemployment, you know, the unemployment rate fell from 8.3 to 8.1, but the 8.1 accounted for the fact that so many people actually just gave up and left the workplace, and so they weren't counted in the percentages. But it's enough to cause any sitting president a great alarm, and no president has ever been reelected with the economy in this shape. And the deficits are so shocking. The United States can't sustain this if we keep it up. We just cannot sustain it. It's got to be paid off sooner or later. The only way, you either pay it off by honest dollars or you deflate your currency, and when you deflate your currency, you cause all kinds of problems. Retirees are just destroyed. People holding bonds are decimated in their financial holdings. I mean, it can be chaos. So we don't want that to happen, and the only way to get it right is fiscal sanity, and so far that sanity has not reached Washington, D.C. Lee.
When couples have trouble conceiving a child, they begin looking for answers. Well, it turns out the addition of a simple food item to the husband's diet could provide the answer. Lori Johnson has more.
In America, approximately 1 in 7 couples has difficulty conceiving a child. About 40% of the time, it's because of a problem with the man. But a brand new study out of UCLA shows that eating a handful of walnuts every day substantially improves a man's fertility.
We found that walnuts were beneficial to male reproductive health in that they significantly increased sperm vitality, sperm motility, and sperm morphology, the shape of sperm. All of these are important indicators of male reproductive health.
The study looked at 117 healthy young men. Half of them ate 75 grams of raw walnuts a day, and after just 3 months were remarkably more fertile.
So I think it's very important, and eventually, I want to have a family. I think this is something I'll definitely share with my family members, friends and family that, could be useful. So I think it's definitely a breakthrough in men's health.
It's unusual for scientists to study nutrition in relation to male fertility. In fact, any kind of male reproductive study is rare.
And I think we need to start thinking about focusing on the importance of male health as well as female health in terms of pregnancy and healthy offspring.
Eating walnuts isn't just a good idea for men who want to have children. This superfood is a smart choice for all of us. They're loaded with those important omega-3 fats, antioxidants, protein, and fiber. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
That's a fascinating study, Pat.
Well, I eat walnuts, but I think it's too late for me.
We can only hope.
All that morphology is gone. Honestly, Terry.
Oh, Dee Dee, if you're watching, fan yourself.
All Dee Dee and I had to do was shake hands and she'd get pregnant. I mean, forget all this walnut stuff.
Could you put that down, please? Thank you.
So anyhow, we've got 4 children, 14 grandchildren, now having great-grandchildren. We got all kinds of good morphologies.
You were eating those walnuts. You had no idea what you were doing.
Yeah, we've launched a dynasty with walnuts. Lee.
It had been 76 years since a British man won a Grand Slam singles championship. Pat was talking about this earlier. Andy Murray had to go through a marathon 5-set match to finally break the drought. Murray beat defending champion Novak Djokovic to win the U.S. Open Monday in New York. The match lasted nearly 5 hours. Andy Murray winning the first 2 sets, losing the next 2, but came back to win the 5th and final set 6-2. We congratulate the Brits on that victory, Pat. The question is when an American is going to win it again. Andy Roddick retired, so, I don't know who the next American superstar is going to be in men's tennis.
The only one is a woman, and it's Serena Williams, and she is the superstar. We don't have any more. It's just incredible. This Marty Fish was coming along. I don't think he's in the class of these great superstars, so. But anyhow, we'll eat English walnuts. That'll do it.
Yeah, well.
On the ballot this election year for voters in Massachusetts, a measure called Death with Dignity. It's an assisted suicide law. And according to Lifeway News, it would allow people near the end of life with terminal illness to obtain a drug that will kill them at a time of their choosing. 2 organizations, Compassion and Choices and the Death with Dignity Centers, helped craft the measure. The Boston Globe reports the Catholic Church in the state of Massachusetts has come out against the referendum. It calls doctor-assisted suicides a grotesque threat to the elderly and sick. Young men who smoke marijuana have a higher risk of testicular cancer. Researchers at the University of Southern California found that men who smoke pot were twice as likely to be diagnosed with testicular germ cell tumors, the most common form of cancer in men under the age of 35. More than 8,000 men will be diagnosed with that form of cancer this year alone. This is the 3rd study linking it with marijuana use. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.